Salutations, Glitch Bottle listeners and fellow travelers on this esoteric journey into magic, mysticism, and the generally misunderstood. I'm Alexander F. I am your host and producer of the Glitch Bottle podcast, and I'd just like to take a few moments to explain my ad-free philosophy for the podcast and also why I am deciding to rely entirely on your listener support. First, let me just say that if you already support the Glitch Bottle podcast, thank you so much. I am truly grateful for your support. And for listeners who have not supported the podcast yet, or who perhaps feel that I should run ads, I'd just like to explain my thoughts around funding the Glitch Bottle podcast. And my goal when starting the Glitch Bottle podcast, and my goal today, is to create through the podcast and through online discussion an honest conversation around everything ranging from grimoire traditionalism and ceremonial magic to the history of magic and research of magical texts and topics, and creating discussions and touch points that scarcely exist anywhere else. Also, I want to talk about relevant and pressing subjects in magic and the practice of magic, research of magic, without having to rely on ads or commercials to fund the show. And you know, many of us pay $3 for a cup of coffee just once without giving it a second thought. And that consumption definitely does energize us for a couple of hours. I can certainly attest to that. But consider if you used that one instance, that same $3, for something that brings real lasting value, more than a cup of coffee ever could. And along with it, it brings a level of esoteric energizing that nourishes you and also your occult practice well beyond just a couple of hours. And I understand that with this Patreon campaign and with people listening right now that there might be some reservations. In fact, for me, it wasn't until I started podcasting from the other side of the circle, so to speak, that I really began to realize how much it took in terms of the personal time, the training, the financial investment required not only to keep a good quality podcast, but also to grow it into the future. And so even though I had initial trepidation asking others for financial support, I now really appreciate the necessity of that. And the real revelation for me in terms of actually taking this step to request your support is realizing that this right here, like this is the most straightforward partnership that I can have with you as a fellow practitioner, as a listener, and as an esoteric traveler. And your Patreon support is what most honestly reflects the benefit that I hope you receive from my work, and that also forms a direct connection between you and me. I mean, consider this, listeners. If you become a Glitch Bottle patron, in addition to all of the exclusive perks and benefits, you are personally helping create that space, that needed space for honest esoteric conversation and ongoing dialogue. I mean, to that point, I really want to say something that the Glitch Bottle podcast itself is and will continue to remain free to the general public and available free on multiple platforms. However, for the discerning listener who truly finds Glitch Bottle valuable, please consider supporting Glitch Bottle to the degree that you find it valuable. And yes, there are exclusive perks and benefits and content on Patreon for people who support the podcast, but also it's not just transactional. I hope that if you do decide to support the Glitch Bottle podcast, that you know that you're supporting it because you hope a program like this exists and hopes that it grows in the future. And I really want to emphasize that there are no third parties here with their own special interests, and I have declined multiple offers to have commercial sponsorship. I've also chosen to decline the kind of auto-generated ads that are inserted into podcasts. You might have heard those in various platforms. And let me explain the kind of dirty secret about how those particular ads work. I mean, many of the platforms will encourage hosts to monetize a podcast by allowing the platform itself to auto-generate ads and insert ads into the podcast, which I find just an interruption that's almost intolerable, often during critical times. And so podcasters are encouraged to do this, but I am strongly against this for the Glitch Bottle podcast for multiple reasons. I mean, A, it's a potential conflict of interest. B, it totally interrupts the flow of the show and the guests who are, are taking the time to make really good points about specific esoteric topics. But C, I mean, I don't know about you, but no one wants to be in the middle of hearing an awesome conversation and a guest making a really good point about evocation, only to have their listening interrupted by random, jarring ads that are completely not only unrelated, but just flat out distracting. And so I prefer that the Glitch Bottle podcast remain professional for you, and I also want to keep Glitch Bottle respectful of the listener's time and attention. And listeners too, I mean, the only reason in this year that we've come to expect anything for free in this technological revolution is because really your time and your attention is the commodity. So that's a direct result of this kind of advertising-based model. Like, advertisers will pay a host or a website to grab your attention, but I prefer to keep the focus on the topics that actually interest you, the listener, and then rather than trying to orchestrate your ad exposure, I prefer to spend my time researching new guests and providing you with high-quality content. So by listener funding this platform, we are creating one of the few listener experiences that are authentically free from all outside pressure. And hopefully we'll be seeing more of this across the board, as almost kind of a new cultural ethic could emerge. Perhaps an ethic where it is direct listener support and sponsorship. That's the new ethic that would be awesome to see. And what that means is, if you see something and you like the work and you value the work, you support the work. Otherwise, the work doesn't get done. And I need your help to do this. And I totally understand the initial recoil that might be there for some people out of habit or deeply embedded commercial conditioning to pay for what we think is free. And I feel that response personally every time I encounter a paywall. But as I choose to move beyond the kind of ingrained commercial conditioning that's out there, I find something that is definitely worthwhile to support. And when I do find it, I just automate my support for it. I mean, automating support is definitely a key. I mean, I offer you to consider this as well, listener, is that, whether it's in relation to unique content or a charity you support or artwork or a hobby, or if there's a cause that you engage with out there, it's also your decision time that's valuable. So you don't want to keep redeciding each month. If you see something that you love and you support, you just want to make that decision once at a sustainable level for you and know that you are supporting things that you care about. And so, for example, a listener committing to $3 a month is exponentially more supportive than a one-time donation of $50. I mean, that's actually worth repeating. A listener committing to, say, an automated $3 per month is exceptionally more supportive than a one-time donation of $50. And it's the support and the action of a small group of people in a small amount to act now that's the key. I mean, it's this action now that is real, and it's what matters. And having said that, listeners, let me be clear. I know that there are some of you who absolutely should not support the show, no matter how much you value Glitch Bottle. And if the cost to you is financial distress, to give even just a few dollars a month, my personal appeal for listener support is absolutely not directed at you. If this discretionary spending impacts your real ability in order to stay healthy and feel safe, then this appeal is not to you. But for everybody else, please know that for those of you who help fund the Glitch Bottle podcast in a recurring way, you're committing to not only keeping the podcast operational and high quality and accessible to all, but also to help it grow in very interesting ways. I mean, your personal support and commitment is the sole esoteric force energizing Glitch Bottle with exclusive content, extended episodes, improved hardware, upgraded software, new projects, new guests to speak with, and an exponentially expanded podcast quality and also material. And listeners, as the show grows in new and interesting ways in the future, it will literally be because of awesome listeners like you and your committed Patreon support. And so I invite you listeners to step in the circle with me and support me on Patreon. Choose the level of support that corresponds with your commitment and values, and together we can convoke the ultimate goals of Glitch Bottle. Excellent guests, quality material, and distinctive topics around ceremonial magic and esoteric traditions, and I invite you to join me on this journey. As always, this is Alexander Eth reminding you to invoke often, uncork the uncommon, and keep the light.